Thanks for everybody getting here. Shaylee's unfortunately just going to be a little bit late. She's at the hospital with her sick granddaughter, but hopefully she said she'd be here shortly. So first order of business is new councillor business, and Councillor Schumann.
Yeah, so I just have an update from Shaylee because she's away. She wanted to update that we have 11 teams registered for the Relay of Life so far.
Perfect.
So she wanted me to pass that along.
Thank you. 1 minutes of our regular meeting of council February 3rd. For motion, any errors or omissions? Councillor Malkinson, Councillor McFadden, any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Any business arising out of those minutes? Correspondence? 5-1. Councillor Malkinson.
Well, actually, perhaps I'll
No,
keep my hand. Okay. I just had maybe a question before. I wasn't able to read the one sentence here that help us what the drafting of the plans are. The part that's written out by Stuart Flynn.
We are asking the city to help us with the drafting of the plans.
Does that say with? Okay. Perfect.
That's what it says.
Councillor Parslow.
I just move that we receive this correspondence.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Schumann. Discussion?
The city, through the lease agreements, the city must approve all plans, and the work of the infrastructure department is always appreciated. And so it's just a standard thing, but they're
Sure.
just saying that they support that addition at the Mile Zero Park.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 5.2. Councillor Parslow.
I move that we receive this and approve the request for the use of the NAR Park on September the 20th.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Kenny. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 5.3. Councillor Schumann.
I would move that we pay our membership dues for the NCLGA.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor McFadden. Discussion? Just our annual membership dues to the North Central Local Government Association for the year for 2014. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 5.4. Councillor Parslow.
I'd like to move that we support the resolution in support of a national dementia strategy as cited in this correspondence from the Honourable Claude Gravel MP for the Nickel Belt.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Kenny. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 5.5, Councillor Malkinson.
I'd like to move, Your Worship, that we receive this letter from the Barry Pages of Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District for information.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Parslow. Discussion? Councillor Schumann.
I would have rather that we supported the regional district, Skeena Queen Charlotte, but it's not the motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Recorded? Councillor Schumann? Carried. Thank you. 5.6. Councillor Parslow.
I believe that we supported this initiative, so I just ask that we move that we receive this and post the certificate.
Thank you. Councillor Schumann seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So we're obviously a little bit ahead of time for our delegation, so we're going to move into our reports. Item 7.1, we have a report from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding our economic impact assessment. Councillor McFadden.
That report 14028 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding the airport impact assessment fund be received, and that council directs staff to I'm having trouble with my page here, Your Worship. To continue with the current practice of using the $30,000 grant funding from NDIT Economic Development Capacity Building Fund to assist with the city's economic development projects, and direct the city's grant writer, if approved, to prioritize their efforts to assist the airport committee in obtaining funding for the economic impact assessment of the airport and its current impact on the city of Dawson Creek.
Seconded by Councillor Kenny. Discussion? So I guess the only issue for me now is with the recent announcement with CMA, if there's isn't some work we should be doing ahead of our economic impact assessment to determine and engage in some conversation and discussion with CMA as the commercial carrier to understand some of the impacts that they've experienced, both in terms of the ongoing services they've provided and the recent attempt at increasing services, to understand the overall operation of our airport to determine if there's some things we need to understand better about the functionality of our airport, the operations of our airport, before we go into the economic impact assessment of what the airport does to our community. And I guess I just throw that out as a thought when I saw this on our agenda to look at that and engage in some conversation with CMA about what's happened over the last 3 or 4 months. Councillor Malkinson.
This might be a silly question, but is the sense I'm getting is that you're thinking this is too fast, or that there's preliminary work that can be done before we go into this?
Yeah, I guess to me the issue of spending money on an economic impact assessment today, of understanding the economic impact assessment of our airport to the community, perhaps first we should be understanding the overall operations of our airport and what it's doing and how it's being, the services are being delivered, and are there things that we need to understand better given the recent impacts that CMA have experienced. So, Councillor McFadden.
I thank you, Your Worship. I quite agree, but I think those things you're talking about would be part of this study. And if we want to have a conversation with Central Mountain, certainly you should, and we should. But they can be done in parallel with this. I suspect there are things happening out there in the corporate world that we're not privy to, in fact, may never be privy to. But I think we need to move ahead with this, as well as have some conversation with Central Mountain and perhaps some other airlines.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
I think as well, like the 30,000 grant funding will be used for economic development projects. I think that the direction for the city grant writer, that's a different pool of money than the 30,000. That's so for the grant writer to pursue efforts in obtaining funding for the economic impact assessment. It's just finding funding out there for it. It's not really a commitment to actually act on it. It's just to explore it. I think by what you're saying, that would come into it.
Okay.
And then the previous study that we had done on the airport did look at all those things, I believe, maybe not all, but some of it of what you're looking for. And so I think this is just kind of moving forward and giving the grant writer some direction.
Okay. Any for Councillor Malkinson?
So this might have been answered in the past. I'm unsure, but as it said in the report, we receive funding for a grant writer. This grant writer is not full time. It's just it fits into somebody else's responsibilities here at the city. Is that right? No?
Through your worship, a grant writer is hired as a consultant.
Oh, okay.
And NDIT will provide $7,500 and the city provides $2,500
Mm-hmm.
of their expenses, and they're required to complete, I think, at least $200,000 worth of grant applications
Hmm.
on behalf of various community organizations.
That's right. I've got that there. Thank you. I was wondering, we don't currently have a consultant grant writer, right? Like, this is a prospective bit that's alluded in the report?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Was that a question? Sorry.
Well, yeah, sure. It was a question.
Yeah, the grant writer is hired on an annual basis.
Oh,
So
okay.
we do need to rehire every year.
Perfect. Thank you.
We have to wait until our application is approved first.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, there have been community groups who've been referred, I guess, through Brenda to the
Oh, yes,
services of this community, of this grant writer. So it's. I'm just wondering. You made reference to understanding the operation of the airport. I'm just not wishing to put you on the spot here, but have you had chance yet to read the work on the airport, the airport study that was done, what, about 2.5 years ago? Okay. So I'm wondering if we should table this until you've had a chance to look at that and then see what your perspective is.
Honestly, I'm good with it. It was just a thought I had in
Okay.
terms of, I really want to engage CMA as one component, and hearing the conversation and discussion, I'm good with kind of how this is proceeding, and we'll flow that interaction with CMA through to it. So,
Okay.
Councillor Kenny?
And you might want to add, there are deadlines for these applications to NDIT.
Sure. Thank you. Any further conversation? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.2, we have a report from the Chief Financial Officer in regards to our community grant requests. Councillor Parslow?
I'd like to move that report number ADM 14-027 from the Chief Financial Officer. Read the 2014 community grant requests be received. Further, that the $7,000 request from the Kiwanis Club of Dawson Creek, the 3,500 requests from Stonewall Development Society, and the 50,000 requests from the Narrowton Friendship Centre be denied. Further, that Council support the Kiwanis Trade Show by providing a fee for service of $7,000 in the 2014 budget allocation. And further, that the fee for service policy be amended to include the organisation as follows. Section 2, Services without agreements, Kiwanis Club of Dawson Creek, contribution to the economy of the city from the annual Kiwanis Trade Show.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Kenny. Discussion? Councillor Parslow?
Just a comment. I really appreciated the material that was presented to us by our financial officer here, and realized that we were heading into a tunnel that we didn't want to go, and she provided us with an appropriate way out of it. So I thank you, Shelley.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Sorry, Don. Item 7.3, we have a report from the Director of Infrastructure, Councillor Schumann.
I'd move the report number 14-029 from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development regarding secondary suites amendment options be received. Further, that notes attached to this report regarding recent meetings with local development and realtors be received for information. Further, that staff be directed to prepare a zoning amendment bylaw which removes the option of placing secondary suites into duplexes, amends the secondary suite floor area calculation to exclude the basement from the 40% calculation, and minimum provisions for parking spaces be included in the parking regulations. Further, that staff be directed to prepare the enhanced consultation plan that includes notices mailed to stakeholders and public information sessions.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow, second. Discussion.
Well, again, I was impressed by the work done here because it's a thorny issue. We're redirecting things here, and I think all the issues have been nicely encapsulated by Kevin's work here.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden?
Just a question, if a developer shows up this afternoon and wants to build a duplex with an in-law suite, would the effect of this stop that? Or perhaps staff, I guess, would answer that.
Through your worship, this is an area where there is some inconsistency in the application of the law by the courts, but generally it's considered that if you are in process of considering amendment, that applications are held in abeyance to the outcome of the process. But it would not affect anyone whose application came in prior to your vote on this matter right now. So if anyone was in the building this morning, the old regulations would apply to them.
Thank you.
Further discussion? So, Councillor Malkinson?
No.
So I just want to add the report that has been produced along with the supporting information. I believe is a real credit to council and administration in terms of taking the time and effort to meet with our local developers and realtors to understand what was brought through to the community with the issue of, first of all, the suites and the size of the suites and the number of suites that we were seeing developed in the residential construction in the community and the impacts that was having on density within our community. So I think it's absolutely a credit to council for taking the time and effort to meet with these people, understand the implications of the issue before simply reacting to and responding to making a decision that sometimes it doesn't give you the fulsome of the understanding of the issue. And I think this is an absolute credit to council for taking the time over the last 2 months to meet individually with these folks to gather this information. And hopefully it's helping us guide us to a decision that we want this community to reflect in 20 or 30 or 40 years as we see that development of the community in our residential and multi-family homes. So I appreciate that from council and certainly from administration for bringing this forward and allowing us to start to move forward with the decision. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.4, we have a Director of Infrastructure on the feasibility of expanding the capacity of the reclaimed water plant. And I'm going to speak to this after I get a motion, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Parslow. Discussion?
Going to move the recommendation first?
Go ahead.
Moved by Kenny, seconded by Councillor Parslow.
That from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development be received. Further, that staff be directed not to proceed with exploring the feasibility of expanding the reclaimed water plant or additional storage at this time.
Thank you. Discussion? Over the last couple of months, it's been certainly a issue that I've had some conversations with Jim and Kevin in regards to the demands as we see it in terms of the increased demands on our reclaimed water facility and looking at the potential of increasing the capacity that we provide through that facility, understanding the impacts that industry are having in terms of accessing and now increasing the use of that facility. So it was just an opportunity for me to look at it from the perspective of saying if we can increase the capacity of it, it certainly gives us one more option of providing a outlet for that reclaimed facility and increasing capacity of it. So as you'll see in the report that right now it's a recommendation that we don't proceed with it just because of some of the components around it. But I thought it was a worthwhile topic, and I apologize to council that I didn't update you guys about that conversation as it's been going on over the last month or so. Councillor Malkinson?
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But I did have one question as I was reading sort of the expansion on, the summary that we received from, I'm not sure who the, Urban Systems. It was a little bit in there mentioning about a U.S. company that was in the process of developing a chemical treatment process that could possibly remove the sulfate, and maybe it alluded to the possibility of undertaking a pilot project in Dawson Creek, or working with some of the businesses in Dawson Creek to see if there's any merit to that process. I'm wondering if staff believes that could be a realistic option in the future.
Through your worship, it may be, but it depends on the usage of the existing throughput. We are seeing Shell ramping up and taking more of their allocation. And you have had conversations with a particular company that intends to take the reclaimed and blend it with other water sources. So if the plant ends up being fully utilized already, regardless of sulfate content, then it wouldn't make any sense to try to address the sulfate content. If, on the other hand, it is underutilized, then it's something that we want to explore.
And industry, or certainly we've been in conversations with other companies who are looking at using other sources, and the saline hub out in Farmington, and there's other companies now looking at the process of reusing and cleaning up the water from the processing, so they're bringing it out of the well sites and bringing it back in and treating that and in their own. So industry are looking at different options in terms of how they can access it, and so that would just, for me, it was just one more option for us. If we could produce about I think it was about 7,000 or 7 million cubes, 7,000 cubes a day of water, of sewage, and we're producing 4,000 cubes at the reclaimed facility, could we increase the capacity? And that was what this process was about. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 7.5, Councillor Parslow.
I move that report number 13-036 from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development, redevelopment permit application from Lindbergh Consulting Incorporated for 8300 21st Street be received. Further development permit number 14-03 for the development of an industrial building at 8300 21st Street be authorized in principle and issued upon successful completion of the required 10-day notification period and receipt of the financial security.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Councillor Parslow.
Just a question. Of course, I wasn't around when the issue of lighting being dark sky friendly. What is the significance of being dark sky friendly all about?
Jim?
Through your worship, that's a provision that has been was developed through your OCP process, and what it means is that the lights on a particular property are meant to illuminate that property and not travel to neighboring properties. So the difference between the two is non-dark sky friendly will illuminate the area of the property and spaces around there. The dark sky friendly has a more directional, the lights are the same lights, but they're directed differently so that the light stays within the property.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 7.6, Councillor Schumann.
I move report number 14-035 from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development regarding the development permit application from Sundance Canyon Estates for 1524, 1528, 1532, 1536, and 1540 Loran Drive be received. Further, that the development permit number 13-30 for construction of 8 fourplex buildings along Loran Drive be authorized in principle and issued upon successful completion of the required 10-day notification period and receipt of the financial security.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kenny. Discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Do you want those recorded?
Absolutely.
I was in favor, Your Worship.
You are free. Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you. You got McFadden? So, you know, I'm going to hold 7-7 because I'm not sure how long that might take us to for our discussion on that particular agenda item. So I'd like to move forward to our delegations. We're a little bit ahead of 9 o'clock, if that's all right. Is our second delegation here?
Pardon? Yeah, I think it is. My eyes are getting a little bad, though. My eyes are getting a little bad, though.
So,
First one's here, I think, Your Worship.
all right, we're going to move forward with our first delegation, if that's all right, and we'll hopefully have Rick will be here shortly. So our first delegation, so it's kind of a pleasure for me to be able to welcome two. If there is, are two people in our region or our area or our community that have had more of a profile in what they've represented over the years, it's not coming to my recollection that Mrs. Viner and Ruth Viner and Miss Patsy Nagel are here in attendance for the Women's Institute Week proclamation. And so it's an absolute pleasure to be able to welcome them to our council today, both personally and on behalf of council. So please come forward. So welcome. I'm the hugger, of course. If you're okay with that.
I'll be a huggy.
Oh, you'll be the huggy? Welcome. Welcome. Welcome, welcome.
Dale, this is Joan Holden.
Oh, nice to meet you. Welcome. So as I say, I don't think any of us who have been longtime residents of Dawson Creek could have anybody who's been part of an organization that's represented it for absolutely as long as I remember, and it's personally a credit to have you guys represent our region, our area. So, whereas the British Columbia Women's Institute is a diversified group of interested, involved, and educated women from all walks of life who, by working together, expand their skills, broaden their interests, and work to improve conditions in the home, the community, and around the world through service, self-fulfillment, and sociability. And whereas they sponsor and promote programs in agriculture, citizenship, home economics, health and welfare, and cultural pursuits. And whereas they function at the local, regional, provincial, national, and international level with a range of activities broad enough to encompass the interests of women. And now therefore I do hereby proclaim the week of February 16th to 22nd, 2014 as BC Women's Institute Week in Dawson Creek.
Thank you.
So congratulations. Thank you for coming to council today, and I'd like to pass it over to you guys to say a few words if you like.
I guess first I'd like to congratulate you on your position as
Thank
mayor.
you.
It's a long time since you were on credit union. It's just that women's institutes have been a long time in Canada, since the late 1800s, and in BC since 1909. And so Patsy has been on provincial and federated. Joan is on federated. I'm on provincial as ag convener, so it's kind of a cross section here, and it's a pleasure for us to be here today and to meet with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having us.
Let me get past it.
Well, I'm just not sure if Jack is here yet.
I don't.
Or Rick. I'm gonna call him Jack for sure.
Maybe we
You
ought
are.
to recess until
Well, if he's not here.
9 anyway. Oh, it is 9.
There was no answer on his cell phone,
Okay.
so we believe he's on
We'll,
his way.
we'll, are you okay if we move forward and then if Rick gets here, we'll get back to delegation? So item 7.7, with a report from Community Services in regards to our grandstands. Councillor Schumann?
I move the report number 14-033 from the Deputy Director of Community Service regarding the exhibition grounds grandstand repair options be received. Further, that council waive the current purchasing policy to be waived and direct award the exhibition ground grandstand repair to Heggie Construction. Further, that $600,000 be approved in the 2014 budget to complete this work. And further, that in the event lead paint is identified, staff be directed to allocate capital funding to safely remove and dispose of the hazardous materials.
Seconded by Councillor McFadden. Discussion. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, I reluctantly support this. Only reluctantly because I hate surprises and so on. But just a question, not meant to be a difficult question, but I'm just like the question I asked as it relates to the Calvin Cultural Centre, the additional funding that's required there. What has been given up in our capital projects to find this $600,000?
Nothing, through your worship, nothing has been given up at this time. So basically, if council moves forward with the approval this morning, then it'll be taken to the budget meeting this afternoon. There's additional information that has come forward from the last budget meeting, additional fair share funding. Plus there is the capital project list that's before you. There is room in the transfer. So there's a number of options that council could use to fund that $600,000, but that's basically your decision. Whether you want to exchange one project or you just want to use the additional funding, or but that will be discussed at the budget meeting after council's decision this morning. In a nutshell, there is room, there is funding available.
Thank you. So, any other discussion? So I'm just going to take a second. This obviously outside of the bounds of our tender policy in terms of how we award the contracts, the time frames of which we're under in order to complete this work is the most significant issue for us, in my opinion, in terms of how we need to get this completed by August 1st or sooner in time for the Dawson Creek's Fall Fair and Exhibition. Since we've had our last meeting, we made a couple of calls. We are dealing with Northern Development Initiative Trust, and we've got Duncan is working his way through that to try to access some funding there. Can I talk about this? Yeah?
Absolutely. We'll in fact need a separate.
What's that?
If you pass the first resolution that you're doing the project and allocating 600,000, then I would need a second resolution around the NDIT as well.
Okay. But anyway, so we absolutely, I think the issue to me is how do we get this process underway and completed? And to Councillor Parslow's question about what are we sacrificing, or is there something going to be sacrificed as a result of this? Well, if we have the additional funding that we'll find in our budget discussions this afternoon from our fair share allocation in 2014, then it's not that we're going to be borrowing the money, it's not that we're going to be accessing it, but we're having to pay $600,000 to a project that we didn't have. So there will be something that won't get done this year, perhaps a paving project or some capital project, but it's not that we're going to be borrowing the dough in order to do this one because of the increase in the allocation of our fair share funding. So there is something that isn't going to happen this year as a result of this, but that's the beauty of some days what we get to do. Councillor Parslow?
Yes, thank you. I understand the reason for proceeding with haste on this. But I have two questions. One relates to the waiving of the policy. Is there any, and I understand the reason for that and support that, but I just have to be assured that we're not, there's no potential fallback on council, legal, for doing this.
Through your worship, the requirement to tender is included in a couple of interprovincial agreements, TILMA and one other. TILMA is the Trade, Investment, and Labour Mobility Act. Those are commitments on the province, not on the municipality. So the province could suffer a penalty because we don't tender this. That would mean in order for that to be enacted, there would have to be a company in another province that felt disadvantaged over not being able to bid on this project and processed a claim through the processes in the two interprovincial agreements. At the end of that time, if the province ended up suffering some loss as a result, some loss or penalty, it might spur them to make TILMA or the other provincial agreement mandatory for municipalities. They haven't done so yet. So at the moment, it is council's decision what their tendering policy would be. You have a policy of tendering to guarantee access to public projects for the widest possible group of suppliers. And if you had the time and space to do that in this situation, I'm sure you would. But the potential consequence of doing that is that you will not have a fair this year. And that's something that I think our recommendation is that you don't risk that, basically.
Thank you. Thank you. And the second question, and reflecting here on the work that's in our budget for the NAR station, you know, the refurbishing of what is now the Museum and Tourist Information Center. The cost of dealing with the lead paint just for that project is about $170,000. Is there any guesstimate about what it might be for this grandstand? Is it about the same ballpark figure?
Okay, through your worship, it's the opinion of the group, the Dawson Creek and District Exhibition Association partnered with the Rope and Saddle Club, that there won't be any lead paint there because they have been regularly sandblasting and replacing, repainting. And lead paint is, it's a historical situation, so you would have to have paint from the 80s on there in order for there to be lead in it. And they say that they have replaced entirely the painting several times in the last 10 years, so they don't believe there will be lead paint. So that remains to be seen. But the issue with lead paint is the method of demolition. The method of demolition that Hagee Construction is proposing is that they will unbolt, starting from the bottom, they will unbolt a plank and remove it and replace it with a new plank. And as they go up the structure, they'll just keep doing that. That will make it relatively easy for them to what's called encapsulate the lead paint, prevent paint dust from arising. So we would expect that the plan of repair for that, if there was lead paint, the plan of repair for that would be significantly less onerous than the plan of repair at the museum. Because normally how dust is raised is that you are cutting into the wood or you are scraping off paint, but in this case the disposal might be more expensive than normal, but probably the removal wouldn't raise a lot of concerns.
Thank you. Further conversation, discussion, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Your worship, could I now have a resolution from council supporting an application to the Northern Development Initiative Trust in the amount of $30,000 for this program? Or for this
Moved by
project?
Councillor Schumann, seconded by Councillor Kenny. Discussion? This was just as a result of I made a call to Ginny North at NDIT, and there is some components of this project that fall within Northern Development Initiative Trust, so Duncan's been working on it and moving it forward to try to see if we can access funding for it. Councillor Malkinson?
Were there, Your Worship, were there any other partners or avenues that we were looking down to see this through?
Well, there is some, but some of them are contingent upon project not
Oh.
starting, right? And so
Okay.
that's part of the component for us in terms of how and what we do.
Mm-hmm.
At least through that one anyways.
Yeah.
All those, sorry, are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Bylaws, 8.1. Councillor Malkinson?
Your Worship, I'd like to move that we receive this report from the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development regarding this zoning bylaw for legally non-conforming properties, and that the zoning amendment bylaw 4203/2014 for the following properties, or sorry, rezoning the following properties from their non-conforming zone to an appropriate residential zone be given first and second readings, and further that staff be directed to publish the required notice for a formal public consultation and public hearing.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor McFadden. Discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So, I just wanted to give you an update on kind of the activities over the last couple of weeks. And I wanted to start with an update on my trip last week to Ottawa. We've been working on the trip to Ottawa for probably a couple months with respect to trying to meet two things. One, obviously get to CN Rail over the right-of-way agreement and the access to that that property for our sewer trunk line, and also dealing with MP Zimmer's office and Minister of Infrastructure to try to ensure that we move that project that we put forward through for the funding request through the federal government. And so I got invited to the tabling of the budget on Tuesday, and again, credit to our MP who put my name forward. And so just moved the reason to get to Ottawa up significantly, and so we were able to get to Ottawa on Tuesday for the tabling of the budget, and then that was and it was such a great day to be invited to. They had a pre-tabling kind of sessions where we were invited to meet with members of caucus as well as a number of ministers. So I was able to meet Minister Raitt, Minister James Moore. There was about 3 or 4 of them, and then I got obviously the opportunity to be introduced to the Prime Minister, and so each and every one of those was such a great opportunity to be able to raise the profile of the city of Dawson Creek with each and every one of them. And the one that was really a surprise to me was the first one, and I'm going to use this as an example because so I'm at this session and I meet Minister Moore, and I give him my card, saying, "So nice to meet you. I'm Dale Bumstead, the mayor of the city of Dawson Creek." And he said, "Holy Dale, it's so cool to meet you." And he gets his assistant and says, "I want to get a picture of you, me with the mayor." And I thought, how cool is that we got a federal minister wants to get his picture taken with a representative from the city. So, and I said, "And I want one with you too on my camera." And so on each and every one of them, I obviously extended the invitation. I want them to come to the city of Dawson Creek for different reasons and different things that I think we can obviously host them in our community. And each and every one of them were very appreciative of the invitation and said that they would be happy to attend. As did I have that conversation with the Prime Minister and said, "We have the coolest facility, city and facility, and we would really like to have you come." And he said to me, "I think I was in Dawson Creek once." And I said, "Well, I think actually it was when you came recently to Jay Hill's retirement party that you were in Fort St. John and Dawson Creek." And he said, "You're right, that was." But he said, "I'd love to come to your city, so you arrange it with my staff and we'll arrange a visit." And so I'm absolutely going to take him up on that and invite him to our community and ensure that he does hopefully come and visit with us. Day 2 of the trip on Wednesday was an opportunity to, first of all, meet with the representative of CN Rail. Mr. David Miller was the Assistant Vice President, and again, Bob, MP Zimmer helped arrange that meeting, and the gentleman could not have been more accommodating and genuine. As I explained, the urgency we have with respect to getting our sewer trunk line completed and ensuring we get their final T's crossed and the I's dotted on the agreement to get that access to that CN property so that we can move forward with this project. And from the work that Kevin and his team have been doing, we're about 80% there, but it's moving its way through. And so I explained to him the urgency for us in terms of, one, we've got such a short construction season, we've got to get it tendered, we have to move it forward, and we need to have that done by April, May, and if we don't get it till June or July, we jeopardize having the project. And I explained to him the situation, and again, just sincerely, he was genuine and said he would get in touch with the people who are dealing with it and hopefully help us move it forward so that we can get it completed. And then the rest of the day was spent with MP Zimmer in having those interactions about our infrastructure funding request. There's been some stuff in the news late last week. The Prime Minister announced the federal infrastructure funding program. I think it's $14 billion that they've put forward as infrastructure funding. And MP Zimmer has indicated to me that if I was there this week, he would certainly be able to give us much more of an idea in terms of where and how our request for that funding is sitting, and hopefully the status of it. So I'm going to continue to push that because we need to get that project underway, and any funding we get from the federal government and that for that capital project reduces the amount of money we're borrowing and ultimately the cost to the residents of paying back that borrowing. So it was a great trip. I really appreciate the opportunity to have been there and experience that on behalf of council and the city, and it was a cool 2 days for my first trip to Ottawa. So I appreciate you guys in supporting that trip. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, can I just ask some questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. As I guess true for every member of council, I've been somewhat confused in the last year or so over the federal government's infrastructure funding and its status and so on. And I appreciate our MP's work, and for sure. But in the announcements linked to the budget speech, again, I may need to be corrected on this, but my impressions from listening just to news on this is that the access to infrastructure funds is hinged on agreement between the federal governments, provincial governments, and in the case of British Columbia, UBCM. What is all that about, and how does that, is that going to get in the way, or is this just going to be if the provincial government and UBCM in other interests, political or whatever, boycott the federal government thing, that we will deal directly with the federal government?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that in terms of how that history of the funding for infrastructure flowed through from the feds through the UBCM. It's my understanding that's changing in terms of how it's being assessed or addressed. And my interactions so far have been purely focused on the CN project and trying to get the funding for that. And my interactions have been solely with Bob Zimmer and Minister LaBelle's Office of Infrastructure, who is responsible for giving the yay or nay to it, is my understanding. So I think it's changing, but I can't answer the question. And I don't know, Jim, can you give is there some change on the?
Through your worship, the Prime Minister's announcement suggested that conditional on agreements with the FCM, with individual provinces, and in the case of BC with UBCM, that the program might be ready to receive applications in April. So there was some conditionality to that. On the other hand, in the budget, the federal government also announced direct funding of several projects. These were huge projects, Toronto Transit, for instance, over 600 million. So, I mean, I think we could be hopeful that we might get direct funding. But, you know, we may have to live with the reality that we're simply directed to an application process. That's unknown at this time.
Yeah, and as I said, the MP has been very, very good, both him and his staff, in terms of helping us, guide us through the process, so I'm optimistic. But then, as our administrative CAO said to me on Thursday, I'm always optimistic, so he wasn't booking the money yet.
No, the mayor had asked Shelley to book that money, and I just couldn't see that, actually.
Show me the money. So, any other questions? We got the announcement a week ago. I received a call from Mr. Doug McRae, the president of Centre Mountain Air, indicating that they were going to be pulling the second flight that they had added, the overnight plane that was leaving early in the morning from our airport. They were just not receiving the kind of passenger loads that they felt they needed in order to sustain it, and he wasn't seeing any increase in it that gave him optimism or reason that he felt he should continue it. And so they've made the decision that March 2nd is going to be the flight, the end of that second flight for us. And obviously, I don't want to use the word devastating, but frustrating and all of those things to me in terms of for our community, because we need to ensure that we have, I think, viable flights, and it adds to the business community and all of those things that you want in your community as healthy and vibrant for your community. And so I intend to follow it up with him in the coming weeks to go down and meet with him and have that conversation and understand if there's implications, as we talked about in the earlier item, that we should understand or be aware of for our airport and the infrastructure of that airport. So. We had allocated $20,000 to the Chamber of Commerce with the announcement of this to deliver and develop the marketing and support to the additional flights. And so a conversation with Kathleen, and we got about $6,000 thereabouts left in that funding unallocated. And so I wanted to bring it back to council in terms of do we bring it back in, or do you want to use it for some promotional for tourism, or do you want us to have a report brought back formally on that? Councillor Malkinson?
I wouldn't mind a report on it, Your Worship.
Okay. So we'll bring that back for our next meeting, and we've got some signs that are paid for the year for the, I think, the rent on them, and we could certainly utilize those. So we'll bring it back in a formal report to council and put that forward for our next meeting. Councillor Malkinson and I attended the Fort St. John High on Ice Festival last weekend. I think we deservedly should have won that competition. I think there was absolutely, without a doubt, the statuesque, the magnificence of that carving, that piece of work that we put together, honestly was unbelievable. And I was pleasantly shocked because I'm the least artistic person in the room, not even close.
It's a good thing you had me there, Your Worship.
And yeah, but thank gosh I had Dunk with me. Now, there was one component, they did deliver us and did give us some equipment, some tools to participate in this, and we're almost of the verge. We've had some brief conversation about this, but there was a group, electric chainsaws, that the City of Fort St. John and the High on Ice Festival folks provided. And I believe I witnessed some of the teams were using performance-enhancing oil in some of those chainsaws. And you know, it's the Olympics going on now in terms of how you have this steroid testing and performance-enhancing substances. And certainly I'm not sure if we should take it seriously and put in a request for a challenge or request a sampling of some of those chainsaws. But I want to thank Duncan for going along with me, and we did a great job. And It was a good day. It was a fun time, and we had a great time. Councillor McFadden?
I didn't know that electric chainsaws had oil in them.
They're not supposed to. That's my point. Like
Okay.
some of them were.
Thank you. I was just concerned about that. Mentioning mind-altering substances, I realized you were out of town.
It might have been cold. It might have been a little cold for us too. The last item, and I'm sorry I didn't put this on the agenda on Thursday. I did meet with the representatives from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure a week and a half ago. Dean Daniels and Scott from Fort St. John, and as the district manager, and I wanted to talk to them about the 17th Street and Alaska Avenue intersection, along with a couple of others in our community as well. But that one particularly I raised. I've had some feedback from people, really close calls, and I'm worried that there's going to be something bad happen at that intersection. So met with Dean and Scott, and so they're going to look at it with their engineering folks to see if they can. It's really tough to put an advance warning system into that location, because you'd have to put it back far enough that you're starting to get into near the intersection of the Hart Highway, Highway 97 South, and so they're talking about maybe can they put a delay red for both, just to hold the traffic off 17th Street before people just immediately go green and in, if some of the trucks on Alaska Avenue particularly haven't slowed or stopped. Thinking about maybe a speed reader board out by the golf course. Maybe the other thing they've talked about is maybe the transition zone going from 70 is too far out past the weigh scales, and because traffic are slowing down so far out that they're picking up speed again, they're not transitioning enough. So we just talked about a whole bunch of different options, because to me the issue is if those big trucks coming into our community, and they probably shouldn't be using it, they should be on the dangerous good route, but if they're using it and if they don't get down to 60 kilometers an hour or below, if they're at 70 approaching that 17th Street intersection and the light goes red, they can't stop. They're just not going to be able to stop. And so it's speed coming in and just not getting it. So anyway, I had a great meeting with them, and they were very good and are going to bring back through their engineering folks some ideas and thoughts in terms of what they can maybe do to help bring some. There's three things you do, right? Engineering, enforcement, and or education. And I think it's engineering we need to do to ensure that we bring some traffic calming into that area. And I also talked about our master transportation plan with them and some of the other corridors now that we've got the development on 8th and 17th Street and out 108th Avenue. And I've got some meetings set up with ICBC and their engineering folks coming in the next month. And we'll talk about that whole thing and bring that in through Kevin and the master transportation plan. That's it for me.
Good job.
Any questions? I'll be guided by your advice separately if you want to have any thoughts on the performance enhancing oil on the job.
Well, I'll jump in if I may. I suggest that next year you have a design team, so we have something that's really artistically pleasing, and that staff set up some ice blocks for you and your assistants to practice before you go. I'm going to be guided by that for next year. But you have to assume first that there's an election in between there, and a person might not be here. So whoever takes the chair and whoever's on council will receive some guidance from us in terms of how to approach the festival on ice. Thank you. Diary?
Through your worship, we'll be reporting off on the Calvin Crooks Center at the first meeting of every month, because at the end of each month, so subsequent to this meeting, all the consultants come to town. So that's the architects, the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers, and meet with the general contractor, the sub-trades, and with Duncan. So we'll get good information on schedules out of those meetings, and there's basically nothing to report at the moment.
Thank you. Consent calendar. Moved by Councillor Schumann, seconded Councillor Malkinson. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Strategic priorities chart.
Nothing on the chart, your worship?
Question and answer period.
No one has signed up.
you want to have a quick break before we go to committee of the whole? 5 minutes, thank you.
Your
Worship,
Sorry?
I would like to suggest, we have a fellow Rotarian,
Oh,
Fire
so
Chief.
Oh,
accept-
cool, then let's do that. We'll do that quickly before the break. So Shorty's gonna be our Rotarian?
Good job, Shirley.
Warren, welcome. Want a hug? I'm non-discriminatory about that. Whereas Rotary is a group of men and women dedicated to service in the community and their fellow man, and whereas the object of Rotary is to encourage and foster the ideal of service as a basis of worthy enterprise, and whereas Rotarians have a saying, he profits most who serves the best, and whereas to conduct their lives and gauge their progress as a Rotarian, they have a test by which all things they say or do should be judged. They are, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And whereas Rotary now has a worldwide membership of over 1,200,000 men and women in over 29,000 clubs in more than 160 countries, now therefore I do hereby proclaim February 23rd, 2014 is Rotary Day in Dawson Creek.
Yay!
There you go, Freddie. Thanks very much.
Oh, face the camera, there's guys.
Pictures. Kiss him, kiss him.
So thank you, we'll have a quick,
He just wants to show who's taller.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a 5-minute break.
Good job.
Once the lady in the high heel shoes is able to find herself. So we're back into item 14.1. We have report from,
Staff Sergeant's not here at the moment, so I
Okay.
would suggest just
We'll move
proceed through the others, and
to-
when he shows up, we can put him on.
Fire Chief. Morning, Chief.
Good morning.
I guess it'd be too much to have 2 hugs. Welcome.
So you have the report in front of you. There's nothing, I guess, too on a whack on it. We did have a couple of, I guess, calls since the beginning of the year. Structure fire where we couldn't actually get into the structure because of the hydro lines being down, so we just kind of stood back and sprayed water in the general direction. So the incident command kept our guys back, kept them safe until the hydro was shut down, and then they moved in. There was 2 injured people in that one. Excuse me. Both sent to the hospital, and our firefighters, again, they took care of those 2 people until such time as the ambulance showed up. So our crew did a really good job on that one early this year. And then the last one was they went to a fatality motor vehicle accident, and that was a tough one on our guys. We have been dealing with that. We have been talking with it. So the guys, again, like troopers, stood up, excuse me, and did what they needed to do and rescued 4 people out of the vehicles. So.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Malkinson.
Thank you very much, Chief. I just wanted, I suppose, to congratulate or thank all the people involved with those incidents. And I understand that there was a, well, the incident that you mentioned before of the structural fire that you couldn't get to there. There was a simultaneous incident that you had to respond to as well.
No, they were quite a ways apart.
Oh.
We did have one incident where we had one structure fire, and at the same time as we had a structure fire, we had, well, they were both structure fires, we had a report of a fire in one of the local granaries. So that stretched our forces pretty thin at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We did manage to save both buildings. The one building was a farm in the farmyard just outside of town, and it was not habited anyways. It was cited for either demolition or moved, so it was no power or anything to that building. So it was not a huge loss, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one in the granary was a electric motor had shorted out, caused some fire, a small fire. We had to go up the ladder about 100 feet or up a set of stairs 100 feet in the granary. Well, not me. the young guys.
Someday.
And put that one out. So,
Mm.
and both of those calls happened at the same time, and like I say, that stretched our
Yeah.
resources pretty thin at that time.
Thank
Wow.
you. Any further questions? Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, what, the new fire truck, what's the status of that?
End of May.
End of May.
End of May.
So that's taken about a year and a half, is that right?
Yeah, it takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months by the time the process starts and you put the order in and your RFQ and everything else. That's about average. There's some companies in the States that churn them out a lot quicker than that, in Florida and that kind of stuff, but then they probably make a lot more than what they would make in Abbotsford, so.
Any further questions? You know, I guess, Chief, I want to talk about you raised it with the guys, for the public, our view of the fire department and the people that work and employed there are people who go attend fires, and we see them leaving on the fire truck. But the emotion part of it for me was when you talk about the guys in terms of how difficult these motor vehicle accidents can be for these employees, and I don't think we give it enough sometimes attention and the credit to these guys in terms of how difficult a piece of their work is every day, and having to be the first responders usually in that vehicle, getting to those motor vehicle crashes and dealing with that whole component of being the first responder at a significant tragic event of when somebody's seriously injured or fatally injured in a motor vehicle accident, and these employees of ours are being the first ones there. And so I just want to make sure that for the public, appreciate that these people go to a significant lengths in terms of being the responders to those events for our community and our region, and being the lifeline in lots of cases to the time the ambulance arrives. So I want to give them credit to taking that role on that sometimes is underappreciated and we don't want to think about sometimes because they are horrific. And certainly my 35 years with ICBC dealing with crashes, I used to see the impacts of the human tragedy of motor vehicle crashes in our region. And so I just want to you pass that on to the guys, how much we appreciate that effort.
I'll certainly pass that on to the crew, and thank you so much for those words.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thanks, Chief. 14.3, we have the Director of Corporate Administration.
Good morning.
Good morning. Anything exciting on the weekend in the Director of Corporate Administration? Come on. Come on, share it with us. Let's hear just a little personal.
Okay,
Okay.
if you insist. Yeah, my daughter was swimming at the Western Canadian Championships, and she improved her times immensely. She was seeded 28th and came in 4th, so she did really well.
Awesome. Awesome. There's a proud mom.
There, proud mom. And she made a university time, so now she can make a university team, so that was good.
Awesome. So we're going to be sponsoring an Olympic
Well,
athlete
I don't
in
know
a couple
if
of
she's got
years.
the height for the Olympics, but anyway.
Congratulations.
I'll pass that on to her. The only thing I was gonna mention from my department is, the LGMA is providing some webinars on freedom of information and records management training, so we're taking advantage of that. Cost effective having the webinars here, and we can all just learn along. We have new staff that need to be brushed up on these things, so that's working out well. So that's later on this week. And unless there's any questions on anything else, the other thing I could mention, I guess, is we've got the business facade program was approved. So that will be launched through the chamber and with you as well. Yeah. So I'm not sure when that's going to come about, but there'll be some large announcement with that, and I think an open house at the chamber.
Thank you, Brenda.
Besides that, any questions?
Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, just the NCLGA have a meeting in Fort St. John in May.
Yeah.
And then I see another sort of, I guess, subgroup of that, the PRLGA, is having a meeting this spring as well.
The PRLGA is the Peace
River, yeah, just as
Local
so,
government.
so when about is it?
That one is scheduled, I believe, for April.
So there is a date set.
Yes, Julie has set the date for that, but there's.
April
yeah,
9th?
But there's no venue yet, so.
But it's Dawson Creek.
Yeah, you'll be sent an invitation from Julie on that.
April the 9th, you said?
Yep.
Thank you, Brenda. Any questions, Councillor Malkinson?
Yes, thank you, Brenda. I was just curious. We did appoint you to be the chief election officer, unless I'm sorely mistaken. I was wondering if there are any strict timelines that have been set about nominations for the elections that are going to be held this fall.
There are strict timelines for nominations based on the election day,
Mm-hmm.
but we're still not
We haven't.
there on the election day.
Okay.
So as soon as that is confirmed, then we'll move backwards from that date.
The province confirms the election day?
Yeah.
They
That will
haven't
be
confirmed?
happening in March, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Brenda.
Welcome.
It's 14-1. I see the staff sergeant's here, so we'll call Staff Sergeant in. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys this morning?
Good.
So I hope that the report I sent you isn't the one I printed out for myself, because that appears to be last month's. But
I wondered.
What did you say?
does it look like last month's?
Yeah,
I kind of
it's
thought it
exactly the
did.
same.
Yeah, it's too bad. 'cause
I
did
thought
a
that
really good one
you,
too.
you had.
So it was would have really pleased you. Actually, that's what I was.
Well, I'm looking forward to something different, because the report I got in my agenda is the previous one. So,
It did seem a little familiar.
A little familiar, yeah, yeah.
so you got something to entertain us with?
Well, I can try. We can try. Yeah, so what it boils down to is we're sort of starting to see a stabilization of the statistics year over year right now. So the stats from last January look very similar to the ones from this January. The previous year we had quite a significant drop off, and now I think we're kind of at a stable and holding pattern, kind of a baseline pattern. I would describe it as. We've got quite a lot of our, maybe even most of our prolific offenders, the people that create the greatest amount of caseload and workload for us, are currently incarcerated, and so we're not seeing, the robberies or large volumes of break and enters or large volumes of thefts from vehicles or thefts of vehicles and that kind of thing. So all of those things are probably at about the baseline right now. And of course, as those people get released, I guess it'll be incumbent on us to start focusing on making sure that they're abiding by their conditions and that they're able to follow those, and and taking whatever action we need to keep it that way. So I think we'll probably see a fairly stable month over month pattern right now as they kind of trickle out and trickle back in. We had a few incidents here in the last little while, both unfortunate. Neither was criminal in nature. One is we had a head-on accident that occurred in which we lost a life. But there was not an alcohol-related thing. It was related almost entirely to traffic conditions at the time, or to road conditions in terms of visibility, blowing snow, and that kind of thing. So we're not viewing it through the lens of a criminal act or even a motor vehicle act infraction. The other incident we had, of course, was we had a shooting, which again is. It's a tremendously unfortunate accident, is essentially the long and the short of it. It's probably enough said on that. This is basically not a criminal incident, though I know there had been some speculation that it was a criminal thing, but that's couldn't be further from the truth. So those were the two incidents that actually, in particular, the shooting kept us occupied for the majority of the month, just dealing with the sort of administrative and operational fallout from that. It kept us quite busy. But yeah, other than that, things have been kind of reasonably good. So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any questions? You know, I had a conversation with the staff sergeant a month or so ago, and one of the things that we talk about in our community of what gives us a quality of life and what do we appreciate about a community. And one of the statements that the staff sergeant made to me was, we didn't have in 2013 a single unsolved major crime in our community. And I thought, how cool a statement is that for us to be able to espouse to our community about raising a safe and healthy community by having a community of 12 or 13,000 people and not one single unsolved major crime in our community. And I think that's a credit to you guys and the staff that do that for us every day and keeping our community safe and the support of our community and working with the RCMP.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's all of those things. I mean, it's a great community that way. I mean, if we're looking for information, points, tips, that kind of thing, or even sometimes the community will actually go and make the arrest themselves. We don't discourage that a little bit, but yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing, and I think it's actually unprecedented. I mean, I've never worked in a community that could say that before. So I've been in 6, I guess. So it's quite an impressive thing, and some of them were quite serious major crimes, and I think they would have had the potential to have kind of gotten away on us if we hadn't, picked up some lucky breaks, I think, in some respects. But I mean, those guys were out there working hard, and I think you have to be working hard to get lucky. So that's, it's pretty impressive. I just feel like I drive the school bus to the game and we win them all, and then come back. So
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks.
Any further questions? Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Yeah, thanks.
14.4, we have a report from the Chief Financial Officer. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you for asking.
Good.
So my report is very similar to last month's as well. In the first quarter, Finance Department is working furiously on the year-end and budget. So our audit is scheduled for the end of this month, the 24th to the 28th. And as you're aware, we have a budget meeting this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And just for the public, the first public consultation will be March 18th at 7 o'clock at KPAC. So just invite everybody to come to that. Also on the staff side, we have a new payroll clerk, John Gibb, and Karen Beckman is going to the Recreation Department. So if you get a chance, stop in, say hi. If you have any questions, just go down and ask John. And other than that, it's just business as usual. Just waiting for the new strategic priorities to come out, and away we go. So, does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Nope.
Thank you.
Later.
This afternoon.
Thank you, Shelley. Item 14.5, we have a report from our Director of Infrastructure and Sustainable Development. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Beautiful weekend we had. It's nice to see the sunshine and warm temperatures. Just a couple things I wanted to touch on in the report. We've had a fairly busy start to the year. You'll see with the building numbers already. We've thank the Dawson Co-op for an addition there that boosted our numbers. So building permits are starting strong again. So and with the activity that we've seen come through our door and over the last couple of months with various developers and builders and the discussions, it certainly looks like it's going to continue to be so. Especially the residential sector. So we're anticipating another busy year. Public Works, as you know, over the last couple of months, we had an extremely busy November, December. We went into January and we're still cleaning up from all that snow, and then we got the warm weathers, the wind. So we kind of had to change direction, and we went into steaming and ditching, and now we're back to winter. So it's the ever-changing climate. But we're in pretty good shape. We spent a lot of January widening streets, kind of opening up drainage courses. So we're in a pretty good spot moving into hopefully spring in the near future. And the one thing that I really wanted to touch on is the energy component in the report. You'll notice that our water resource manager, John Kalinschuk, is with his area of the world, with all the water and sewer pumping and everything, is that he's been able to reduce his energy consumption by 22%, which I think is a huge, huge accomplishment. And I'd like to attribute that a lot to our energy manager, Matt, because they've been working together ever since Matt arrived, looking at opportunities for efficiencies. And really what they were able to identify was just changing how some of the pumping was handled. And, you know, by idling down some pumps and doing some different things in different times and managing those peaks and flows, John's been able to obviously see some great savings there. And even though the dollars are about the same because hydro rates went up, but you'll see in there had we done nothing, we would have probably spent an additional $97,000 in energy costs. So I think that's huge. And that's just, just kind of that first take. And you'll see in the report that we're also doing a more in-depth study into the water and sewer system to look for more opportunities, and I believe there are more there. This was really just operational. Now the report or the study will go into more of the actual mechanics and the pumps themselves and the controllers, the VFDs and whatnot. So I think there'll be more opportunities coming forward, and the good news on that is that Hydro is paying for most, if not all, of that work that will come out of the study. So I think that's just great news. The mayor touched a little bit earlier about the sanitary sewer trunk line, that project. I did get some more correspondence from CN on Friday, kind of finalizing the one component as far as the right-of-way agreement. We're still waiting to hear from the real estate division on the anticipated costs for crossing the property and the ongoing costs, so haven't heard from them. But we fully anticipate to have everything finalized, and we'll be ready to go to tender at the end of this month if everything is in good shape. So, yeah. Is there any questions?
I took note of the electric figures that you provided here under the deputy director's report, and that was exceptional to see, very exceptional. And it's I'm not certain whether it's worth. Well, I think it is almost worth reading it out. You know, despite the increases from the Water Reclamation Center, the Hanson Lift Station, and 3 other stations here, we still managed to save $8,000 last year, or a net 2%.
Yeah.
You know, on our energy. So that was great to see.
Yes, thank you. And again, it was noted in the report, and I should have mentioned that, of course, the water and sewer is greatly affected by seasonal peaks and valleys, whether it's a dry year, a wet year, and all those things. But so things will go up and down. But again, it's great to see, and we did see some the water reclamation. Of course, that electrical usage was up 270% because again, that plant was. In 2012 was just starting in the fall.
Yep.
2013 was a complete year, so of course we would anticipate that. But even with those increases, like you pointed out, we saw an overall decrease of 22%. So yeah, it's good news.
Kevin, could you give us just a quick update on the what's been happening in the last month with the reclaim facility in terms of sales and
Yep.
the volumes that it's delivering?
You bet. So in January, the reclaim, Shell didn't actually use any in January, but our truck fill component was about 16,000 cubic meters. And again, some days we have 0, and other days, we were pushing 1,800, 2,000 cubic meters a day. So again, it's in response to that demand that the industry has, those ups and downs. And of course, we've had some discussion with some local haulers here that are looking to maximize that reclaim, and if we can deal with some of the cross-border issues, I think we could see significant usage in that over the next 6 months.
What's a typical average month if January was 16,000 cubes? What's a typical has been in 2012? Is there a typical?
You know, I don't have that in front of me, but I would say that's probably not far off the norm.
Yeah.
Like you said, you know, that's averaging 500, cubes a day, roughly. Just depends.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, through your worship, the reclaimed at that 16,000, there's room for it to grow. But you also need to look at the potable water stats. So in January, you put a little over 200,000 cubic meters through the water treatment plant. Almost 20% of that was used for fracking. You look at the folks who took it. That's 5 times as much as Puskupi was used for fracking. And the reclaim center can't take up all that slack.
No.
So the truth of the matter is, the frac industry is going to have to find someplace else to get water, because if you look at maximizing all we can give them of potable and maximizing the reclaimed, it still doesn't add up to what they project they're going to need. That's why they're exploring things like the saline water hubs. It's just not going to be able to come from our system.
Thank you. Any further questions for Kevin? Councillor Parslow?
I don't know about questions, but I mean, I think it's great that we gathered this sort of data. I just thinking to myself here, the cost of pumping is, let's call it close to $500,000 with our current system from where we intake from in the Kiskatna. I bet you it must be if we were pumping from the Peace River, it would be probably a couple of $1 million a year.
It would be significantly more, and when we looked at that, the 2003 study, which would be some significantly lower hydro rates, it was estimated to be about 1.2, 1.5 million in energy costs, I believe. So in today's rates, and we all know that hydro has said rates are going to continue to go up over the next 5 years, it would be significant expense.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard from our CAO, which I don't believe is confidential. I don't think
We'll
so.
find out.
We'll soon find out, won't we?
I'll whisper in your ear and tell you what it... No, I thought it's to do with water. I thought it was really good news, encouraging, as we try to inform the public about the various water issues and so on, relates to Bear Hole Lake. And the fact that a replication of the good news we had last year about that recharging and how much of the water got down to our weir has been repeated at least once or maybe twice. I think that just shows that that we have what we did with the through that bylaw around where we entertain different conservation strategies, that the city doing that, not only was it a sensible thing to do in itself, perhaps, but also from the point of view of securing management of that Bear Hole Lake, and the fact that it wasn't a one-shot deal that was done now seems to be a pattern, gives the community, I would think, a great deal of, should give the community, let's say, in my opinion, a good deal of comfort about the security of our current water system. And I thought that was good news.
Well, we're
So I
certainly
haven't
starting.
been naughty, Jim?
No.
Okay.
We're starting to learn more and more, obviously, about the groundwater recharge and Bear Hole. And like you say, it's again, we see that Bear Hole's full, and the river's really healthy this year. Obviously, we had a good year last year. We've had a good winter with lots of snowfall, and again, moving into spring, I think we're in really good shape.
Thank you, Kevin. Anything
bet.
further? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item 14.6, we have a report from our Director of Community Services. Good morning, Barry.
Morning.
How you feeling?
All good so far. Just an update. There's a lot of stuff in the report this time, so if council has any specific questions, I wanted to sort of put into next cow as a further discussion around the lifeguard apprentice program, which we feel has been very valuable, as well as the work around the aquatic facilitator work we're doing around looking at some of our challenges as we move forward in the pool. We've had a number of staff workshops with the facilitator, and I just had the report this morning, so I need some time to digest that and bring back to council. But the positive side on the lifeguard apprentice program is that for the first time since we went to our combined LG2, LG3 programs, first time we've been able to fill a full complement of staff, including the front desk. So hopefully we've addressed some of the recruitment retention challenges we've got in the north, and hopefully look forward to some very positive days there. Kevin had also talked a little bit about some of the work Matt has been doing. I think Shelley forwarded the presentation from BC Hydro to council. Certainly I think Matt should come in and talk a little bit about that. There's some really great news in there, specifically around some of the energy savings in the Encana and our larger buildings, and certainly our abilities to exceed the targets that we hope to see. So that's a great news story that needs to be talked about as well. Just touching on in the report, the horticultural report side as well. We'll bring forward the Crescent View park plan at the next council. I think I'll bring David in to talk about that. It's ready to get some endorsement from council and then go back out to the public and continue to work forward with that. The hanging basket contract is before you as well. The Peace River Greenhouse was a group that we've had in the past. Significant again, those numbers are fairly relatively, they haven't changed that much over the last few years. And so if there's any questions around that, certainly we can address that. But wanted to certainly highlight where I think the value of where we've been looking very closely at facilities and trying to bring events in and continue to move forward. And February 7th, Megan and the staff did a tremendous job on the Montreal Old Timers game, and for those that had the opportunity to attend, there was a letter that I just received as well late Friday. I'll submit to council through administration, but it reads, as you know, on February 7th, the City of Dawson Creek, in partnership with the Dawson Creek Senior Canucks, hosted the legendary Montreal Canadian alumni team. Event was overwhelmingly successful thanks to the support and financial backing of the city. Over 1,100 tickets were sold up front, and that was not including their sponsorship and the volunteers that were in that building. We estimated almost 1,400 people. So there was over 24,500 sold in tickets and corporate sales as well as a very healthy 50-50 pot that night. So not only will we be fully reimbursed our money, we make money off the fact that there's some really good, it's probably the best concession day in a long time. We get our money from the rink, from filling the building. So it's a good news story all the way around. So the Senior Canucks were just sending a letter of thanks back through, and I thought it was a great event. A little bit of fun. Certainly saw a lot of Montreal fans that I didn't know had old red jerseys hanging in their closets. But and I'd be amiss if I didn't. I know he goes by the name of Pink. Is that correct? Pink, apparently on his birthday, scored a legendary goal for the Montreal Canadiens. He paid a significant amount to play with them. So quite exciting to see the local, right from the choir singing to the little kids playing against the legends. A great community event and lots of fun. That led into our very successful partnership and February 10th annual family event day, and some great numbers around that as well. So over 574 swimmers, 88 are 5 years and under. So that's pretty critical of how we recruit and retain and get them in our pools. So number of climbers, 82 for 5-year-olds and under, which I think some of you might have saw the little picture of the 5-year-old climber, was quite exciting. So that's a great partnership, and I think in the report as well, it highlights the number of partners in our community that were very big in that and making that a great family day to come out. So if there's any questions around that, for sure. And finally, just a quick update on the IWHF Worlds. We've taken, since the support of council, that finishing up the report and the shortlisting on January 31st, we have taken an attitude of, and working with Samantha and Ryan, is that we want to be so far ahead of the curve they can't say no to us. So what we've been doing on our side of the financing is that it's very unprecedented in the sense of moving forward. We have now, with the Hockey Canada $240,000 grant and the city's support, we're well over $500. We're at $505,000 so far, and that's before we even bring them for a site visit. So pretty incredible. We did a presentation to Peace Region last Thursday, and for those that don't know, we received $150,000, 3 years of $50,000 each, and it was a good day because I think it was an easier sell in the sense that when, you know, our Denny Morrison, the region, won gold, it's easy to talk about legacy. There was a very good feel in the room around that, and I think we captured that mood. There are 12 Olympians that stayed in our homes in 2009 that are still, you know, fighting for gold. Clearview is hosting the first ever provincial girls championship. So the fact is that legacy is critical in this and getting the money up front. We have worked very closely now. We had a great meeting with minor hockey, and we're talking about the opportunity of legacy of shutting down every girls hockey program that weekend of the championship to bring them all to Dawson Creek. Utilize the gymnasium space, the open space, the outdoor space, and the Ken Arena to have an all-girls day, all Mother's Day opportunity, which is quite unique. And we've gone as far as talking to the president of Hockey North and bringing in girls from Yellowknife. So if we're going to do this, we're going to blow it out. I think we're going to give them no reason to say no. I can also report out that on the corporate side, as well as with tourism in the province, we believe we have another $200,000 that we could put on the table prior to even selling a ticket, which again I would say is unbelievable in regards, and it's been an easier sell because the legacy of what we've done with the Olympic team, what we've done with the 2012s, and certainly the Olympics are really helping us right now. Included as well of the $505,000 was a corporate commitment from Global Spectrum, Philadelphia. They see this as a very unique opportunity as well to try and help us support, put some money back in the community. Have committed to $15,000. So it seems to be coming together, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say I was almost over the top yet, but I would think by the time we secure, we know we've got the buildings, we know we've got the community, we know we've got the logistics in place. It's just a matter of us beating the competition. Very happy with that. If there's any questions around that, I think the oil and gas side is working very well. I think we've figured out a way to work through that exclusivity, and I've been working very closely with Hockey Canada on that. So, any questions?
Thanks, Barry. Councillor Parslow?
Well, yes, congratulations for about the regional district. I'm glad they stepped up to the plate, but I'm sure when you told me all the things you were doing, how did they say no? I mean, but you never know, do you? So, well, congratulations. I sure hope this pays off. Can I switch, though, from all that good stuff to something in the report just triggered something. The Mile Zero Part Society meeting last week, the issue has been flagged around the safety of the trees, particularly at Radar Lake. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I've said that the arborist does an inspection of these trees, and if there were safety issues, they would be reported to the appropriate authorities. How recent was his last? I don't expect an answer right now. You won't know that. How recent was his safety check? And second question related to that, which is a more general question. There were talks about the tree replacement program of the city. There was one. The statements were made, Barry, that it doesn't seem to be in existence. So can I flag that? Because we certainly there, and I'm sure other locations in the community, there are aging trees that have outlived their normal life expectancy. There's indications of shedding limbs. As you know, there's a lot of young children go down to Rotary Lake there, and but there's a need also to plant substantial replacements. By that I mean not a little seedling, but some beginnings of a well-formed tree, and they would like to know what is the program.
Okay.
And that maybe something could come back to council, because is the assertion that the tree replacement program gone by the wayside? Is it true, or what is the situation?
Sure.
Okay,
I think
thank
what
you.
I'll bring in David next, Cal. And again, I don't ever attest that the science that he has and the knowledge he has is great to share, so I think it'd be a great opportunity to bring him in. Okay?
Thank you. Councillor Malkinson?
I appreciate Councillor Parslow's questions. That was actually a topic that I had flagged for discussion at the strategic planning session that we're going to be going into pretty quick, that I'm very enthusiastic about. Barry, I was, there's just one thing that I suppose caught my interest in the report as well, and I suppose they were two, and I was wondering, the relation, whether or not there'd be a relation between them. I'd seen that, maybe I can just read from it. It says that the aquatic team has been working with a facilitator to try and identifies ways to increase attendance at the center there, and they did a spot process to identify the keys to improve attendance at the facility. And then under the Memorial Arena, there's we continue to move users from the Kin Arena to the Memorial Arena to maintain one ice facility during decreased ice rentals. This reduces facility costs. I was just wondering, whether or not there'd be a relation between the two in the wake of our user fees and charges process that we undertook last year. Either that, or I was, there's that, but I was just wondering whether this is just an effort to optimize the services that we have. I'm just wondering if it's a problem, or just an effort to do the best that we can. I don't know.
I think there's, excuse me, a number of things that we look at continually from the management side, and that's looking at efficiencies and effectiveness of the operations that we deliver to the public every day. There was some good work, and as I'd mentioned, around some of the work at the pool, it was one of those issues where we looked at and said, and we had some great discussion with media in the last week and a half around that. We can't ever sit back. You can't look at today. You're always trying to look 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. And I think we do a very good job of that strategically at the higher levels, but the challenge becomes at the lower levels. So I don't mean that in a bad way, but we're working, like in the case of our biggest user is minor hockey. And we've met with them. We've indicated to them that we need to find some of the answers around why we have those pockets. And I think we believe we know where they are, because minor hockey hasn't dropped in numbers. They too have become a little more efficient in how they practice, whether that's half ice practice, more kids on the ice instead of 8 kids on the ice and only using the full length but an hour. So they internally are looking at efficiencies. We've offered to work with them on a 5-year strat plan to try and address some of that. But sort of interesting is the first year they've ever played in leagues and across on the Alberta side. So when they play in a league, the tournaments don't seem to be as important, and then playoff structure is totally different. So there's a lot of stuff that we're looking at them, and so instead of just having 5 or 6 activities on the weekend in the Kin side, we're trying to maximize and again turn the lights off and lower the plant and be as efficient as we can. And ice user group meetings are going to be very critical this year. So I wouldn't say there's any indication at the user fees, but those are all things internally that you do review.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we need to look at those bigger pockets over time. At the pool, as I said, I just received, and you look at a basic goal as something that it's not a basic goal, it's a key goal, and it's to describe, train, coach the attitudes and supporting skill sets for staff to create a family-friendly environment. There's a lot of work in there that we can be doing. Your first experience right from the door, time you step in, from the atmosphere of the pool, the front desk, the experience in the pool, it's got to be within those areas. And so everything has to be lifted, everything has to be worked with. You can never sit still in a recreation world. So I think it's positive. I look at all this on the positive side. So we'll continue to plug away and we'll report out as we go. And we've challenged the staff back, and staff are starting to work through that. So these are their strategic plans. These are their operational plans that we've asked them to work through. And arena efficiencies and pool numbers are two of the things that we're going to spend a lot of time on this year. Okay.
I thank Barry for that. That's awesome, and the enthusiasm, keeping on top of things. That's wonderful. I appreciate the answer. That's great.
Thank you, Councillor Malkinson. Any further questions? Councillor Kenny?
Not a question, just a comment. I was present at the regional district meeting there last week, and I just have to applaud Barry and his team on that presentation. It was amazing. It inspired everybody and set the tone for the rest of the meeting. It was excellent.
We thought it was good when they voted right in front of us.
Pretty impressive.
They didn't even wait. Yeah, they said, we all know what we want to say, and they voted right then and there.
Very emotional.
Pretty impressive to get that at the same session, so good for you guys.
Yeah, and I truly believe that legacy, just not here, throughout the region, is very high right now. And I just go back, it's a testament right from, again, Councillor Charlie, the hosting of the Winter Games, Everything grows off there because that's where athletes start, right? And from Brenda's daughter on, it's pretty cool stuff when we slow down long enough to take the time to understand where we're going with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Barry, I guess if I could just have one question about the, so first I want to congratulate you guys on because I was at obviously the Montreal senior team. I thought they did a great job, everybody, and it was very, very well done. A fun night for our community. Under the U18, and you talked about the legacy, one thing that just kind of hit me was, is there any opportunity for us if we're bringing in all these female athletes from all different parts of the province and the country to participate in, to really leverage some activities on our outside rinks and ensure we maybe plan some components around that? And is that part of the overall plan for the event? And I guess I'm thinking about
it really is, and I think that side of the brainstorming, working with our partners out there, I think this is quite a unique opportunity when because we're talking about why not us, right? And why not finish the Triple Crown? And then when you get the opportunities, what we want to have is throw that legacy out, and nothing is, I can tell you, I dream every night with it, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I would think the three rinks, the Memorial, the Kin, and the Canada Event Center, are going to be leveraged pretty heavily during that period for games and practices and additional ice. But I guess it just hit me if we got these young female athletes coming into our community to have 3 or 4 outdoor rinks to really plan some fun activities for them to be a part of as well, because it might be difficult for us. Anyway, I wasn't sure if that was part of your overall plan, and I'm sure that'll evolve as well. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
It'll depend on the weather, won't it?
It'll be good. Media question period, folks.
Oh, sorry. Actually, I did have one. I did have a couple questions. I guess the first question is related to the duplex bylaw changes, and I just wanted to know if the changes that I'm not sure if this will sort of be addressed in the bylaw yet, but for people who are currently living in secondary suites within duplexes, how will this bylaw sort of affect them, or will it affect them, or what's the kind of situation there?
So they're designated as non-conforming once, and if the bylaw passes, so they're non-conforming suites, and so the only time it would change or there would be any implications to them is if something happened to them where they required a permit in order to do something that changed them, and at that point they become non-conforming. So Kevin, am I?
Yes, yeah, through your worship, that's exactly right. They're legal non-conforming for the life of the building, essentially.
So if there was a fire or they were destroyed in some way and they had to be rebuilt, they couldn't be rebuilt in their current configuration. Now they would become duplexes, or they would become a home with the new bylaw.
Okay, so they wouldn't be necessarily like kicked out of
No.
whatever their duplex for just because it wasn't compliant? or-
They're legal in terms of how they were constructed under the terms of the existing zoning.
Okay.
And they're called a non-conforming suite then, and if anything ever happened to them in the future.
Okay, no, that's good. And I guess as well, just for the, I thought I just, sorry, this might be in the report and I might have missed it here, but I thought you guys heard about the NDIT application for the grandstands. Sorry, was there an amount given for that? If
We-
it was, I missed it.
We think we could be eligible for up to $30,000. I think it's
Okay.
$100,000 that you can qualify on a total project, up to 100 or more, and you can qualify up to a third of that. So we believe there may be $30,000 in some funding available to us.
All right, okay, cool. I think that's all I have, Liz.
Thanks, Will.
All right.
Thank you. And so at this point, we're gonna now recess to our closed at 11 a.m. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everybody coming today. See you in the movies.
In the movies.
What's the 11?
A meeting to order of budget meeting. Our minutes of our meeting of February 4th. Motion. Councillor Malkinson, seconded by Councillor Wilbur. Is there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Any correspondence? We have a letter from Dale Campbell.
Received for information?
Moved by Councillor Wilbur, we receive for information. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion?
So there's a couple of items on there that I just want to emphasize that the Miles Zero Park Society really appreciates the support it gets from the city and also from its interactions with staff. You'll notice in that letter a reference to paving of there's a shortage of parking when there's been a lot of community events at the Miles Zero Park. And it's pleasing to have these community events that are so well attended. So the hope is that in future budget years that there could be some attention paid to the need to add into the paving for parking. And the desire also is to pave the roads, pads in the RV for future. The one other thing I want to make mention of is the solar heated hot water tank that was installed at the Sudeten Hall. If it's possible, they would like to have that moved to the RV park where there's far more use of that piece of equipment. And if there's a way of, I think those things were installed with students at Northern Lights College, if there was a means for doing that. But all that stuff goes through staff. That's not a cost item necessarily. It's a permission item. So they just would like that to be done if possible. The rest is fairly routine. Again, just like that letter you received in open from the Historical Society early this morning, anything that's done at the park from the point of view of new facilities or adjustments to the facilities goes through staff for advice and all the necessary approvals. Dale Campbell will be presenting to Council at a future date with the help of the city staff, a map showing all the new additions that are proposed for the Miles Zero Park, and for which the Miles Zero Park Society is raising money for, or has set aside money for, so that you'll get a sort of a 10-year picture of the development. So that will be at a future meeting, probably in about a month's time.
Thank you. Anything further? So So all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 4, we have a report, number 14034 from the Chief Financial Officer. That wasn't me. Councillor Schumann.
Move that report number 14-034 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the 2014 financial plan draft 1 update report be received for information.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kenny. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So we have some items for discussion. Looking through to administration. Did we have any items that were brought forward?
There was information requested by Councilor Parslow, which you see, regarding consulting. There's the new fair share calculation, and I think you might want to make an allocation for that fair share money based on your decision this morning about the grandstand. And an item that was referred from a regular council meeting some time ago was the proposal from Integrated Airport Systems regarding engineering for a runway extension. It was originally referred to strategic planning, but strategic planning hasn't exactly happened, so it's in front of you now.
Okay. Councillor Parslow?
Well, as it relates to fair share, the budgeted amount that you had was originally 12,300, was it, or what was the amount? I now see it's 12,955,954, but what was it before?
12,398,041.
So the $600,000 for this grandstand, have you allocated the increased fair share towards that, or do you need a resolution from council to do that?
Through your worship, we would need a council resolution to do that.
Okay, I would like to so move.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Parslow that we move that allocation from fair share into our grandstand project. Seconded by Councillor Schumann. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
So staying related to fair share, if I may continue.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. The 1.5 million that we've set aside for the completion of the Calvin Crook Cultural Centre, that is, no further work needs to be done in that regard, unless, of course, we decide not to do it or something. That's already been covered in the original budget proposal.
That's correct.
Right. Did that money come from fair share? Do you know it?
At this point, it does.
Yes. Okay. Good.
Yes.
That's
One of
fine.
through your worship, one of the directions was that the amount of fair share be increased to capital. So when you prepare the budget, you have the operational budget and the capital budget. And so there's approximately a $6 million transfer from the operating to the capital,
Yeah.
which has been designated fair share.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have on fair share. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Shelley?
Yeah, so I just think it's helpful to speak a little bit about the items that were put forward to strategic planning and why they're in here. Because council has not done their strategic planning for the year, these items were sitting in limbo. So what I'm looking for is direction that, in light of the delay on the strategic planning, that council either wants to deal with them at this time or they want to defer the decision on that time.
Councillor Schumann?
I would suggest that we defer the airport's systems limited proposal. That we defer that, because I think that should come into strategic planning and not be dealt with right here.
Okay.
Now, just to give you some history on that referral, when it came to the council meeting initially. I believe it was a proposal put forward by a group that was interested in doing the work.
Yeah.
So normally through the city policy, if city council wants that work done, we go out to tender, not the other way around. And this came to council as we're here to do this for you, so that's a little bit outside the normal process that we use, so.
I think we should just.
So,
So what's the motion?
we're gonna defer it, through the
Planning.
strategic planning exercise, is what Councillor Schumann's suggesting?
Sure. Put it back to strategic planning, it might just.
Where it was supposed to be in the first place.
So, are you,
Yeah, you
sorry,
just
I
need
just,
to second it.
yeah, I just wanna make sure you're moving that as a motion, and so I need a seconder,
second.
Councillor Malkinson. Discussion.
Well, I don't see the need for this. In light of what our Chief Financial Officer just reminded us, it was an outside group that wanted to raise money or do something with this. We have a Class C estimate before us, so why would we need to take this any further? Just share this information to the outside group, and that should be sufficient. So I don't see it referring this to a future strat plan. So I would like to make an amendment to the motion, which has been seconded, that we just that we just strike referring to a strategic planning. We just defer it.
Defer,
is that-
just defer it.
Just defer it?
I'm good with that.
The seconder?
Yep, that'll be fine, Your Worship. I don't have a problem with that.
So do I have a seconder for that deferring motion?
Oh, yes.
I'll second.
Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion.
But again, just to reiterate, but this information be sent to whoever that group was. I can think of some of the people perhaps, but I don't know what the group was that they have this information. They want to raise money.
I don't even know. I think it's
That's up to
something
them.
that Councillor McFadden brought.
Okay.
Didn't you bring this?
I had
Go-
a
Councillor
Sorry,
McFadden?
Your Worship.
Nope.
I had a chat with the airport manager, and he phoned these folks, and they had prepared a similar report several years ago. And what they simply did was they dug out the old report, brought it up on the screen,
Yeah.
popped in today's numbers, and said, "Here's what you're looking at." That's how it arrived.
And then we moved it to strat planning. Or
Yeah, and I think that's where it
Forward
belongs.
it.
I don't think we should just make a motion to delay it to what, to where, to when.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's what happens. Things get deferred, and then they just end up getting lost off in the wilderness somewhere. I know we've had a bit of issues out there in the last 10 days, but that doesn't mean we're going to roll the place up and mothball it. We still have to look forward. So I think we should be just, well, I don't know. What's the motion, first of all?
We're,
To get
the
rid of
motion
Debating
is
on
to
getting rid of
defer
it.
it, to get rid of it.
Like,
Not-
be gone.
We're not bringing it back at this, as this process. Through this budget deliberation or through strategic plan.
Well, then where would it go?
It's gone. Defer indefinitely
Into the history books.
to the minutes.
Well, that's ridiculous. What's wrong with you people?
Vote against then.
Well,
You've
I
spoken
certainly
against.
will. Thank you.
Sorry.
Further discussion on the motion.
Good God.
Well, in fairness, I can't see us putting any money into this project for many, many years, given all the other things that we need to put money to from the point of view of infrastructure. So, as much as I like to support my colleague over there, I just can't see it in light of all the needs for capital money that we have, that I would have to deem more essential than extending the airport runway.
Thank you. Further discussion. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Oh, so it passes 4-3. So the opposed is McFadden, Malkinson, and Kenny. Jim?
So, not to confuse matters, but of course,
the process that your consultant has set up on the strategic planning is that any one of you can bring anything you wish to the table at the workshop on February 28th. So
yeah.
anyone who wishes to bring this matter forward can certainly do so.
And I'm sure it will. I'm sure it'll surface. Thank you for that.
What is the proposal for engine?
This is a quote to get actual engineered drawings
Oh,
so
and-
that you could
Sorry,
on
my
a
screen
survey
is.
what would the
Yeah.
or
Yeah, yeah.
potentially tender,
Yeah.
so that you would know exactly what an extension.
No, I was confused. You see, the width of my screen, Jim, says proposal for engine. I need to.
That's what mine says too.
Does it? Oh, so.
It just came up on the agenda like that, because there's only so many characters. I
Yeah.
seen it too on Friday and said, what?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You thought we were talking about a fire engine or something, right?
Well, I thought it was an engine linked.
An engine.
I thought there was an engine attached to the airport runway somehow. It was going to keep the birds away or something. I didn't.
Oh dear.
So we have another item.
Request for budget information.
Budget information on consulting.
Yeah. I asked that this be on the agenda because I get lots of questions about that, and I like to be able to answer intelligently and know what I'm improving.
Okay.
So that when we say to staff, well, where did that come from? We know where it came from because it was approved in the budget. So I want to know what I'm approving here. I'd just like to have a quick overview of what we have here and why we have it, or what is the scope of work that's planned. So I just thought we'd start at the top and go down.
Perfect. So do you want to walk us through either Jim or Shelley, that report?
Certainly. So council has the attachment for, just for the public. It basically details all the consulting work that the city is looking at to do in 2014. So that's approximately $540,000. On the first one, when we look at consulting for financial purposes, we're looking at by department or by division or whatever, so that's how I'm going to describe it. So one of the items that staff's going to be working on is fair share renegotiation. That has come forward in previous council meetings, where the city is cost sharing with the city of Fort St. John to renew that fair share agreement, and that's just the beginning of the process. So the city is allocating $50,000, and the consultant that is doing the work is Colin Griffith and Associates. We did some work on preliminary work on strategic planning, and Mr. David Marshall was up to do some meetings, and the city has allocated $20,000 for planning session, and that will be finished off towards the end of the month, I believe. The provincial government, intergovernmental relations consulting, the city contracts Ascent. Basically, that company does work when the city needs assistance to do with provincial government relations. Jim, anything else to add on that one?
So I can't tell you whether you're getting value for that money until you do your strategic planning and tell me what you wish me to accomplish. So depending on how much of your strategic work for 2014 involves advocacy to the provincial government, I could tell you then whether I think this is a necessary expenditure going forward. And of course, there's also the issue of what work would replace this work if this consultant was going to be not used, then how would we accomplish the same tasks? Those would be the questions. But that really needs to wait for your strategic plan.
Councillor Parslow.
Couple of questions. So this is an annual fee, regardless of whether we use this person's services, maybe just in January, June, and February, September. I mean, is this a set?
Right, it's a retainer
Retainer,
contract, so
okay.
there is a maximum number of hours in the retainer contract, after which you would pay separately, and you pay separately for expenses if there are any.
Sure, yeah. So supplementary to that, then, how does this work interface with the responsibilities of our MLA to be advocates with government for us?
Well, the answer to that is if you assume, as a member of the Liberal Riding Association, you may assume this, that the city of Dawson Creek's interests and the interests of the Liberal Party of British Columbia will always run together, then we would never have any need to be warned about something the government was going to do in advance, or any need to approach government from a point of view of asking them to change their mind about something. I don't take that perspective because I've been here 34 years, and the number of times where we could have used some warning about the provincial government's actions, or where we were asking them to do something they didn't wish to do, are numerous. So I don't think you can rely on the MLA to carry the ball for you. Our previous MLA got in a whole world of hurt when he took positions contrary to the government's position. So I don't think we can expect our current MLA to do that.
No, that's fair comment. Can you think of some examples, Jim, not wishing to, anything that the public shouldn't know about, whereby this group has sort of been able to, the Ascent group has been able to assist the city?
Well, as an example, they were the consultant lobbyist on the 2005 fair share renegotiation, and did great work for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next we go to specific consulting services to do with protective services for the city. One of the 2013 strategic priorities was to do a terms of reference on the feasibility study to do with the fire station. And so that work was carried forward to 2014. And also a departmental review was done, and staff are following up with that.
Can I just interject?
Sure.
Okay. As relates to that fire station feasibility study, is that study, has the scope of reference for that work been determined?
Yes,
I
through your
think
worship.
so.
When the fire department master plan came in front of you, it had recommendations about investigating the current fire hall in terms of its longevity, in terms of its potential for expansion for new equipment, and in terms of its response times to all areas of the community. So it recommended that you get an actual professional to look at all these matters towards either suggesting you needed another fire hall, or you needed an expanded fire hall, or that this fire hall was fine for your future.
Okay, thank you.
The city has some ongoing consulting services, and that's just to do with training updates as far as occupational health and safety, WCB regulations. McMillan and Associates does that work for the city. Then we have a small amount to do with the multiplex, and that was basically for just a contingency for safety authority costs that we might incur on anything. Moving on to recreation and cultural, staff have allocated approximately $10,000 to do additional work with Brian Johnston from Park.
What is that additional work?
Make sure you.
The descriptive on that is basically some continued consulting to do with the arenas and ice user bookings.
Oh, I see. Ice user bookings. Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Then we go to transportation services, and staff are looking to do a road condition assessment update. Last time we did that was in 2003. So basically what it'll do is look at the road inventory and do a condition assessment to see which are the shape of them, basically, so that you use that in your capital planning. Airport transport just has some ongoing contingency for consulting as they have their short-term objectives from the airport sustainability report. We've got the $50,000 allocated in the water fund to move on with the second phase of the water security. Staff are working on that currently. And also additional amounts for water modeling or some pre-engineering work that is being done on different water capital.
What does water modelling mean?
Kevin can speak to that.
So through your worship, when we have new developments and
Oh,
there's a lot of times we have to
Yeah.
run scenarios to ensure
Yeah,
supply capacity pressure.
sure. Thank you.
The next 5 items are basically to do with the SCADA system that's used in the water system. Some water sales system programming. That's to do with the when people come in and purchase water on their fobs. Some watershed project. Peace Country Technical Services does some work for them, as well as some projects related to the weir.
Actually, Kevin
can.
Kevin can tell us who Peace Country Technical Services are.
Yep. So that's Barry Ortman, who does a lot of contract work for us out at Bear Hall doing groundwater sampling and flow measurements. He also does the actual release at the weir if we do that. He's specialized in that type of work.
Yes.
Just for my understanding here, what's the difference? Well, probably different projects, but N10. What's the difference between N10 and N11? Are they each for different projects, and if so, what are those projects?
That's basically just a tracking system. One's to do with computers and one's to do with radio.
Thank you. Yeah.
So then we have some additional consulting to do with ICI, and that's a company that works again with the water treatment plant system and the SCADA system. So there's different codes that we allocate money to, but it's could often be the same consultant. In addition, Councillor Parslow had asked us to provide some detail on the amount that was included in the contract code for sustainability. So staff basically went through that code, and there's about $70,000 allocated there. So what happened when we first started all this is basically we had a group of codes called sustainability. And then when the energy manager came on, we had separated it into sustainability and energy planning. So after we did the review that you requested, approximately $47,000 of the amount in that code was actually energy work, energy planning work. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that over to the energy planning section. Basically on the energy side first, that's to do with the Kimbork Aquatic Heat Reclaim Project, energy audits for the library, the curling rink, and the arenas, and the citywide energy monitoring system. So basically what that does is it leaves about $23,000 left in sustainability contracts. And staff have put forward plans to complete the Green Building Energy Dashboard wrap-up, and they will use Pembina for about $10,000. And then work related to collaboration on community outreach events for sustainability initiatives, including water conservation, waste reduction, and staff training on certain initiatives, and the contractor there is NEAT. So basically in the sustainability side, there's about 2 contracts between NEAT and Pembina to finish up some stuff and to do some special events.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
Related to that, nothing involving New Harvest Media?
No,
Okay.
the descriptive on the budget package was basically on work that had been done in the previous year. So
Okay.
that's where that came from.
Thank
Now,
you.
just to clarify and get council direction on that, so the 2 items that aren't in the draft plan yet are work to do with the capital asset management plan and work on the fiscal gap. And so staff are looking to get allocations of $50,000 each to move both of those projects forward. And if we can get mayor and council approval to do that, we'll update the plan resourcing to include.
And in all
those.
likelihood, some portion of each of those amounts will be consultants. That's why
Absolutely.
Shelley's bringing it up at this point.
Councillor Malkinson?
I'd like to move that we include those here. The 50,000 for the for both.
Thank you. Seconded?
I'm going to second
Parsons?
it, but second it and then ask the question.
Discussion?
50,000 for fiscal gap work, in addition to, I thought I saw an allocation for fiscal gap work. No?
No, I didn't have it included.
Okay, what was this?
There was a descriptor, but no funding allocated.
Okay, thank you. And what was the other, second item?
To move forward with the second phase of the capital asset management.
Oh,
plan.
yes, of course, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? Councillor Wilbur?
Oh, no, go ahead, something else.
Any further comments on the two allocations for fiscal gap and capital asset management? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Councillor Wilbur?
I just had a question actually regarding the road condition assessment. Is this over and above and something different than our master transportation plan?
Yes. Through your worship, the master transportation plan tells us which are the most appropriate routings for people to take and for vehicles to take. But they don't tell us, so in a couple of cases, that's new construction, like the 13th continuation. But in other cases, it is existing roadways, but it doesn't tell us anything about the condition of the existing roadways. We're working off a 2003 report. So a consultant came in and poured our roads and told us which pavement was in the worst shape. And we've been working off it, but that's 11 years old. So we just think it's time to get those roadways tested again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Malkinson?
Your worship, sidewalks were covered in the master transportation plan that was done last year. Isn't that right? The quality of them? This one will just cover roads?
The transportation master plan made condition statements about sidewalks because you could look at the sidewalk and tell you don't need to core it.
Yeah.
So yes, they did. They certainly recommended certain areas where the existing network was insufficient, it had deteriorated. So.
Councillor Parslow?
Okay, I have two more points. One is just a question about this sheet of paper. This is just an update, and it doesn't require any resolution.
That's correct. There was
Yeah.
just,
Some description problems, weren't they?
Yep.
Yeah. My second point is not of the same easy tenor. The second point I just want to raise as something I've heard that isn't in the budget, that some people think are disappointed that it's not in the budget, so you may be hearing about it. And I have shared this with Jim just briefly. This relates to the art gallery. There's concern that there's a good deal of rot in that building, and that the painting is in a very poor state. And so I think they're going to visit council and make a presentation or contact you about that. I didn't say anything at the meeting, I just learned, but I have looked around the building and from a very lay perspective you can see some issues. So I guess has staff looked at that prior to developing budget, and is it your opinion that the building is fine for another year?
Absolutely not, Your Worship. But it is our opinion that there are other priority projects
Well,
that
yes,
rank ahead of
yeah.
that. So the painting of the art gallery is in our 5-year look ahead, but it's an extremely expensive project because of the
Nature
the
of the work.
size, and there are also the issues around hazardous materials removal. So it's quite a large budget number. I think our last figure, Duncan, we've got a figure from 2008, something like that?
Yeah, and it was just for painting. It didn't I have to do some testing to see if there's lead on that building. The museum had lead, so it's likely that that building will as well.
Even in those days, it was a hefty price tag, so, yes, we intend to do that. Yes, there's going to be hazardous materials testing and a firmer budget number, but this didn't appear to us, actually for the last 2 years, it's been in the first mix, but not in our recommendation to council, just because of the other projects that are also in the mix.
If I might add, you
Sure.
know, the other thing that, and I certainly concur with these statements. I mean, the view of many people is that this is our last iconic building. You know, with the loss of the Alaska Hotel, and they want they'll be asking to make sure the council commits to maintaining this icon of the community. I said I did comment that. I said I certainly agreed it was an icon of our community, and everyone speaks highly about this facility and how it is unique and so on. So it won't be neglected, but you may still have a delegation coming about that.
You know, it all speaks, you know, to our conversations earlier today about the grandstands and all of these infrastructure facilities and things that we're responsible for. And so to me, it just emphasizes how critical the issue, first of all, for us to get through the one big capital project this year of our sewer trunk line. Holy man, if we could ever get some dough to eliminate the pressure of borrowing and to then make some good long-term decisions about how we maintain some of this infrastructure without always being in that reactive mode of prioritizing and saying, we don't have the dough to do it again this year, and then it's 5 years later, right? It's just such a significant. Can I ask then, of the fair share allocation this year that's in our budget, how much of that is now fully committed towards our capital projects?
Dollars?
Yeah.
Bear with me.
64% plus or take 5. Doesn't mean anything, really.
Can I?
Do you have the original number, Jim? Because all we're gonna do is basically add.
577.
Yeah, that's right. We're gonna add
And that's
the allocation.
as a percentage, it is
63,
64.
Go ahead, Duncan.
Maybe while they're searching, Your Worship, I could ask a question. I believe Duncan might be able to speak to this. I could be wrong, though. Is there, I just don't want to leave the meeting without a strong impression of what's been provided for the, or what's been, provided for the library in the budget here. But was there a plan, or at least an identification of some improvements to shelving in this 2014, and also carpets as well? I'm wondering about that.
Okay. So there's money in the budget for replacing the flooring.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, I was kind of under the direction that we were waiting to find out what the greater overall plan at the library was. So I was just looking at asset improvements that would be relevant if the library wasn't in that building, or the city did something else with that building at that time. So I've just focused on flooring and carpeting.
Things that need to be done.
And looked at shelving.
Thank you. That was my impression.
Thank you.
So, Your Worship, the answer to your question earlier, after you make the change, the allocation to capital will be 52%, and the allocation to operating will be 48%.
Thank you. You know, to me, I guess obviously the long-term impacts of what we've done in the community over the last 10 years or 15 years in terms of significant big capital projects, to be able to get a year or two without putting that strain either on our borrowing or capital to be able to get to the position, to me, next year or the year after, to be able to start to plan for these things so that we have, of that 12 or 13 million dollars of fair share, to be able to say, we're putting 3 million bucks this year towards our elevator or to the Lakota Center or to those facilities that we can start to allocate and do proactive planning. Isn't that where the ideal state for us would be? So I really appreciate that, where we're at now, and hopefully next year we continue to move that bar higher and increase that capacity. And I think ultimately is this part of the component that gets us to that fiscal gap conversation of how we plan for the future and remove the pressure of reactive planning. Jim.
You're such an optimist, George. So all
Good for you, Dale. Just be optimistic.
But
That's right.
always keeping in mind that the citizens, even as we speak here, are forming their own expectations about what they want. And there are people out there who say, wouldn't it be neat if Dawson Creek had an indoor soccer park? Wouldn't it be neat if Dawson Creek had an indoor skateboard park? Wouldn't it be neat if Dawson Creek had a water park? Doesn't Dawson Creek really need a new library? So the idea that we're done with big projects forever, you'd have to convince your citizens of that.
Yeah.
Anything further? Duncan. Councillor Malkinson, I'm sorry.
That's all good. I'm just curious, what was that 52% there in dollars? What was the
52%.
Yes, but what was the amount in dollars? I'm curious. Do we have that?
For
Or?
your worship, it's about 6.7 million.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Shelley.
So, through your worship, you might want to talk about the date of the first public
Oh, I'm sorry.
consultation.
Thank you for reminding me of that. So we have a public hearing set for March the 18th, and that's a date that's in the middle of our spring break, as well as it was. I've committed a personal situation. I got to take my mom to Edmonton for a medical appointment. I can't be here, and so I've asked if it would be possible to move that 1 week out. And so we're suggesting March 25th. Jim?
So have you changed your plans regarding a trip south? Because I have on my calendar that you had planned to be in Nevada that week.
Oh yeah, no. I'm plugging a date in there for some stuff, but I'll be here if we move that date.
So March the 20,
I think it was the 25th.
20th,
Tuesday, the 20th.
Sorry,
March the 24th.
24th. Was it the Tuesday, the 25th?
Oh yes, for the
We're just moving it
consultation.
back a week.
We're just moving it back a week.
That works better for me.
Sure.
K-PAC is available.
We have spring break.
But spring break is that week of the 18th.
It's 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
It's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the second week.
And I purposely did my
I'm
stuff
sorry.
for the second week because
All right.
of budget meetings.
And I'm gone that first week.
You're gone the first week?
I'm gone the first week.
Well, what's wrong with moving it
Ahead?
ahead to the 11th? Shelley, is there a problem for you?
There's no problem for me at all.
This-
No, the only way you would have an issue moving it to the 11th is if you have significant changes that a councillor intends to bring up at
Yeah.
the next council meeting, which is only days before.
Mhm.
And we got a big concert that night, the 11th in Chicago.
So,
Oh, yeah.
this is our last budget.
And I'll be
meeting
at
with
that.
public
Oh, okay.
consultation.
So,
This,
So as long as there's no changes that council expects, the only significant change would be to do with the funding on the sewer trunk line that I can foresee.
And
so-
that would be if we got some
funding.
funding.
so.
We'll call it Dale's money.
10th or
10th or 12th, doesn't matter to me.
March 12th.
March 12th?
Is there a concert on that?
I was under the impression that we couldn't change our, meeting schedule. No offense or anything like that, but our meeting schedule on a whim. We have to advertise it. We're required to advertise it beforehand. We have to set our annual meeting schedule every year, don't we?
We're not for our budget meetings,
No,
we don't.
no.
I'm sure they wouldn't be telling us to
That's why we're.
change it if it was illegal.
Oh, okay.
So March the 12th, if that
I
works
move that we
for...
move it to March the
Either.
12th.
Oh, that-
That's a Wednesday?
Yep.
12th is a Wednesday, 10th is a Monday.
So what about the 10th? Does that suit you better? No? Going once, going twice?
I make a motion we move it to March 12th.
Moved by Councillor Wilbur, it's the 12th, seconded Councillor Schumann. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. So it's March the 12th?
March 12th it is? Assuming,
We
we
just
haven't
voted.
checked March the 12th with K-PAC, but we'll do that right away.
Thanks very much, you, everyone. I appreciate that, and I, like I said, sincerely apologize that that happened.
So can I just ask a technical question again, just memory bank? Do we need a motion around this budget that we take to this? This is a first draft, that we approve the first draft or something?
Yeah, through your worship, you've already done that.
We've already done,
Now
That's
you've
the
made
first thing we
changes
did.
today.
and we need, these changes are all being approved, so that's fine, yeah. Thank you, yeah.
So then we go through the public consultation on the first draft, and then we basically summarize what the public has requested or comments, and then that's reported at the next meeting, and then the 5-year information is brought forward for council to discuss.
And the meeting begins at 7 p.m.
That's correct.
K-PAC.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. My mom appreciates it.
He's such a good boy.
I committed to it before I realized what was up. So any further business? Motion to adjourn. Moved by Kenny, seconded by Wilbur. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your day.
Sue.